Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. There's Tim. And Tim, is that your band playing some thrash metal there? No? Is that thrash metal? Does anybody know?
That's thrash metal, you know, with the pending Thrashers interview.
There you go. Excellent pun, Richard. Well done. You brought your punny A game today. I like to see that.
I'm a little plugged up, though.
Yeah, you do sound a little hoarse there. Too many late nights?
They call Richie Big Pun.
Too many late nights?
Maybe too many late nights.
Yeah, okay, Richie. You're not as young as you once thought you were. Anyways, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're pleased to be joined on the line now by Chris Vivlamore of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Chris, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me on.
Chris, we'll start with the on-ice news regarding the Thrashers, and then we'll probably move to what a lot of our listening audience wants to talk about, and that's, of course, the ownership issues at Atlanta. Let's start with the trade the Thrashers made yesterday, acquiring Blake Wheeler and Mark Stewart. With those two players, what's not to like about the trade for the Thrashers?
I think it's a good thing for the Thrashers in the sense that they needed some scoring. They needed to get bigger up front. When you're looking at your three centers being Rich Peverley, Brian Little, and Alexander Vermishov, when he gets back, that's pretty small. So Blake Wheeler gives them some size. I think maybe, and I think they're hoping that a change of scenery might get him going. Certainly, he's familiar with the coach and Craig Ramsey, so that's going to help. And they've been looking for just one more defenseman to kind of add to the puzzle. They've been lacking a little bit back there of late, so I think that helps them too. And again, another guy who's familiar with Ramsey's system, been injured, so they're hoping again if he gets healthy, he can help them down the stretch.
Chris, this week the Thrashers re-signed Dustin Byfuglien to a much-talked-about 5-year deal worth $26 million. That's a cap hit of $5.2 million. First off, what's the attitude around the team regarding that signing? And then, as a part B to that question, why did the team give Byfuglien about $1.5 million more per season than they did Tobias Enstrom, who you could argue is a better defenseman?
I think for his offensive capabilities as well, and Enstrom's kind of a quiet guy and not big in the public eye, where Byfuglien is good in that regard. And you're looking to build your franchise and you need a face, and they do after losing Ilya Kovalchuk, and Byfuglien might kind of be that guy. And certainly his offensive capability, not to take anything away from his defense at this point, but obviously, as you're right, Enstrom's a better defender at this point, and helps him tremendously in a pairing. But with his shot, with his at times stick-handing ability, and he can always still get him in front of the net, that helps them a lot. So I think that's kind of all contributed to why you give him that kind of salary.
Chris, we've obviously heard a lot over the last 2 weeks about Zach Bogosian and how he might be unhappy with some of the Atlanta coaches or one Atlanta coach or the team. Is he on the trading block? And if he is, why is that?
I don't think so. I had the GM Rick Dudley on a call yesterday talking about the trade, and I asked them that again directly of Zach Bogosian. Would he consider trading Zach Bogosian? And his answer was, well, even Wayne Gretzky's been traded, but his plan at this time, and he does not expect to trade Zach Bogosian, and I wouldn't think he would at this point. They're trying to build the team here. They're doing it with young players. Certainly way too early to give up on a number 3 overall pick. I think it's a little bit of much ado about nothing with the conflict he's had with the coaching staff. I just think, they're trying to teach him new aspects of the game, things he hasn't always had to do, but that this coaching staff wants him to do, and so there's a little, learning curve there. So I did not expect him to be traded.
Chris, are you surprised at how poor the team is defensively, given head coach Craig Ramsey's defensive pedigree?
A little bit, because when you come in, you thought you had 6 solid defensemen, and you thought it was going to, that would be a strength of this team, and certainly here over the last 24, 25 games has not been. And so I think that's why, and even going into the season, I think they wanted another defenseman to strengthen that unit. So that's why I'm not surprised they took a chance on Stewart. We'll see how that works out, but certainly what you thought was going to be a strength has not been down the stretch here when they needed it.
We're joined on the line by Chris Vivlamore of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Chris, we have to make that transition to the ownership, and then I guess the first question is: are the current Atlanta owners, willing and committed to finding a local ownership, or are they just going to be selling this team if they're selling it to the highest bidder?
If I take the owner who I interviewed this week at his word, they're certainly still trying to find investors, and I think the public plea, maybe not necessarily pleasing to the NHL, was one of those efforts to say, "Hey, we're serious." And I don't think it's an empty threat, but I don't think it's a done deal. They're gone yet, but I mean, it's certainly an outward cry to say, "Hey, we're serious here. We do need help." So if I take him at his word, and I have no reason not to, I do still think they're looking for people here that want to invest and help and keep it here.
Chris, I know who he is because I read your blog, but for those who haven't read your blog, who is Steven Rollins, and should we be taking him seriously?
At this point, and his name has come up quite a bit here in the last year. At this point, I have no reason to believe that that group is a serious group. But that being said, I spoke to him again yesterday. He claims he's got an investment group. He claims they have the wherewithal to do it. But I've talked to league sources and I've talked to team sources, and at this point, it's no closer to being done than it was. My understanding is it's no closer to being done than it was when he initially expressed interest in doing it. Now, whether that moves forward remains to be seen, but that's where we stand now.
Chris, basic question. I mean, it seems like this Atlanta Thrashers ownership group has been trying to get rid itself of this investment from day one. Why did they purchase the team in the first place?
Well, it was a kind of a package deal, and I think they thought the group they put together, and they wanted to keep it in Atlanta, but I think all along they thought they were going to need help, especially, trying to get the hockey team established more. It's been woefully inconsistent over the 10 years, one playoff berth, no wins, so that was going to take some building. But when you very early on in the process then lose perhaps the owner with the deepest pockets, then it becomes an issue. So, they say all along they expected to lose some money, not this much. They hope to have even somebody else come in after they purchased it to help, because they knew there were going to be some losses.
Chris, and Bill Daly said on this show a couple months ago, he alluded to the fact that the arena location was somewhat of an issue in terms of drawing crowds. Is that the case? And if so, why is it that much of an issue?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I can see, yes, where it is an interest. It's an issue. It is right in downtown. There's not a lot of parking around. It doesn't lend itself to the atmosphere that, say, if you want to compare it to other southern cities here, like a Raleigh has, where there's a big punt, people going 8, or Tampa, where it's in downtown, but there's tremendous amounts of restaurants in the channel side and things for people to do there. And a great deal of the hockey-interested market here lives in the suburbs, and it's not always a difficult thing to get in, or it's not always an easy thing to get in. So I think that's part of the issue. There is a public transportation station right outside the arena, and so that's a plus on one side. But to a certain segment of the fan base here, where the arena is an issue.
Chris, we're going to let you go on this final question. Where is this team going to be playing hockey next season?
That's a $175 million question or so. My gut tells me that this is not a done deal that they're gone, but it's certainly headed in that direction. Now, whether this thing can get turned around quick enough so that they're in Winnipeg or Quebec or another city by the start of the season, I'm not sure yet. But if you take the owner at his word and his plea, moving is certainly a real possibility at this point, possibly more real than it has been.
That's a good answer, Chris. Thanks very much for joining us. Chris Vivlamore of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Again, thank you for joining us on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show this morning.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Take care, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, food for thought. I mean, from the start of this whole saga, be it in the Phoenix or in Atlanta, it always seemed to me that the easiest team the easiest way this deal gets done is with Atlanta.
Because the owner wants out.
The owner wants out.
Owners.
There's no bankruptcy court. There's nothing of that nature. It's not Phoenix was the first team in the South. So when that fails, it's more symbolic than if another random team fails.
And also, Drew, I mean, Bill Daly wouldn't have made the comments he made on our show.
Yes.
Had there not been some...
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
I think and the funny thing is, obviously there's been trouble, Drew, with this ownership group since they bought the team in, 03 or 04?
Who knows? They've been in court since the day they bought the team.
But this year alone, I think there's actually been more turmoil with this ownership group than in Phoenix because, well, in Phoenix there isn't an ownership group.
Yeah,
but, I mean, just based on, it seems like everyone is just really tired of the Atlanta spirit and how they've basically been infighting for 5 years.
It's a good point, Nancy.
That's very true.
It's a good point because as we saw here, when fans aren't happy with ownership or Winnipeg Enterprises, whatever it may be, the backlash goes towards the team and supporting the team, and that's a very good point.
And there's nothing but hostility from the fans to the Atlanta ownership, and for good reason too. The fans in Atlanta have been lied to from day one. Let's go to break. When we come back, NHL news and notes, which is going to be more trades. Jump while we go to break. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.